I'm a feminist artist. I really, in fact, think about using my artwork to do my politics and not the other way around. So much of my work has really centered on feminist coalition networks with a particular interest on feminist healthcare networks. So in the recent past, I've done projects on birth and birth workers, on domestic violence support and advocacy workers, and now on reproductive healthcare clinic workers who would often refer to themselves as abortion care workers. And I think about all of these projects as being sort of interrelated and informing one another. I'm trained as a photographer. When I was a teenager, I was really quite obsessed with living inside of other people's pictures, ripping pictures from magazines and books, layering them on my wall, my bedroom wall, and then putting layers on top of those layers. Sort of some deep curiosity, fascination with other people's pictures, which is not only how do other people see and make sense of the world through pictures, but how do pictures relate to one another in often sort of explosive or constellatory fashion, right? They're nonlinear, they're non-chronological. I've always been interested in the feel of pictures, right? Like the materiality of pictures, their haptic quality. I've always understood them not only as sort of illusionistic, magical portals, but also as physical things that travel, that can disseminate information. And so for me, photography and social movement building, particularly feminist movement building, have always been hitched together. The Last Safe Abortion is a project that has been evolving now for the past 5 or so years. I started working on this project, in fact, before the Dobbs decision even leaked in 2020, 2021. I started collecting images from abortion clinics. In fact, it started in a clinic near where I live in Columbus, Ohio, in Cleveland, called Preterm, which is the longest serving abortion clinic since 1974 in the state of Ohio. Because of my work on the ground, organizing for reproductive justice in Ohio, I had some contacts in Preterm, and they let me rifle through their boxes. And I was just amazed by what I encountered. I mean, boxes and boxes. What we would call archives, but what they call the boxes of photos in the closet or in the drawer. I began to photograph inside of the clinics as well, sort of thinking about how to build on and extend the living archive, right? This is not something that is fossilized 50 years ago. This is work that is ongoing up to this present second, and so sort of thinking about sort of what it would mean to braid those kinds of images together such that they become indistinguishable, across region or time. And in that regard, sort of quite literally, the volume really matters because it points to just how coalitional this work is. Here, I'm really interested in how care can be transmuted through photographs, or in some cases resist that transmutation, right? Because care work is, as we know, an invisible thing, right? It's at best, it's unphotographic, right? Like answering the phone, cleaning the house, cleaning sterilizing medical equipment, et cetera. Care work, as feminist scholars will say, as feminists will say, renders itself invisible when done well, right? Like we know this as mothers, that nobody takes stock that our kid has a dirty diaper if we are regularly changing it. Nobody notices that our house is clean if we're regularly washing the counters, right? Like that it undoes its own presence. And so that's a challenge for me to think about sort of relative to photographs. Like how do you show care? I live in Ohio. We have worked really hard in our state organizing to codify abortion rights, for up to 22 weeks in the state constitution. This is not an abstract assignment. This is not an abstract agenda. This is not a metaphorical agenda. This lives like on the ground floor in urgent, relentless real time. How we relate to photography, not as a document, but as a tool. And so I started really to think about on that basis like how, as somebody who is been involved in reproductive justice and healthcare advocacy and activism since I was a teenager, like what does that mean? What could photography mean for me, for our movement? What would I even represent? What is the visuality of abortion care? And for me, as you can probably tell behind me, that was about the people who are doing this work. It's always felt really important to me to sort of think about how to use multiple walls, or if I'm using one wall, how to make something that's so vast that you can almost step inside of it in the sense that it fills up your periphery. There's a sort of moving forwards and backwards and a scanning up and down. Time plays a really important role in this work. These are people who, despite threats on their lives, despite having to go through metal detectors, are coming to work, 9 to 5 and doing their jobs. And so in this regard, you might see that I have a number of clocks that sort of punctuate the installation. Also thinking about what the clock symbolizes relative to time passing, right? Like thinking about waiting for one's period to come or not come, waiting for the Supreme Court decision to come down, Supreme Court session to open or close, waiting for the mandatory, waiting periods. One part of working on this project that I wish that I could share is how much I have come to know and love and admire and respect these women. And the people I worked with are all women. This is not a project that happens overnight, and this is not a project that happens without a dedicated amount of mutual investment and trust and reciprocity.